Hi, marketers. This is Dots, and welcome to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. With me here is Ryan Sullivan, founder at Podcast Principles, and we will discuss B2B podcasts, need less B2B, and way more of this. You want to know this? Strap in, and let's get into it. Ryan, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to do this, and I appreciate you taking the topic and running with it. And I'd love to dive in today, man. Let's just see what we can get into.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you on our podcast. So before we start, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, your background, your role? You do have an incredible story, by the way, and we all want to hear it.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's kind of weird because I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like I feel like I continue to tell the story, but it's,
Mhm.
after a certain point, you kind of get bored of your own story a little bit. But I know
That's
that, it's kind of that thing of like, even if you're helping or inspiring, a few people, it's worth it. So I just look at it as practice. Like I'm always trying to, get the story down and tell it in better ways if I can. But yeah, a little bit about me if you want the titles. Founder and podcast principles, business owner. Started as a podcast producer. I'm a rapper, so I perform. I'm a DJ, entertainer, so that's my other job. But really, my kind of 9 to 5, or as you probably know, 7 to 9
Mm.
most days, or however long the day stretches. I'm really doing this. What that looks like in reality is helping podcasters grow, helping them evolve, helping them change and come up with brand new ideas for their show, which I think is really the differentiator in this climate, which we're going to get into today. We started as a podcast production company, then really turned into a podcast launch company. And that's our bread and butter. I'd say our core offer
Mm.
is, helping people who haven't launched yet launch their show. But like I mentioned, we also transitioned into helping current podcasters too. We started that with podcast audits and then now with
Okay.
podcast coaching. So we have a coaching program, whether you haven't launched or you've already launched, we do that. So that's really what I do on a daily basis is I'm talking to podcasters, listening to podcasts, kind of living the dream, I mean, it's a hustle, but, working at least 6 or 7 days a week. And that's, try to keep that going. So it's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I look forward to you. Like where we come from, we say I want to be like you where I grew up, where I definitely enjoy the podcast space, everything around it, podcast marketing, production, promotion, ABM, whatever it's called. It's what a great time to be alive, if I would call that. But something about you is that you're a wedding planner. And if you're listening, it's not for weddings. Stop. Don't think about that. It's not for weddings. It's with a wedding planner, for podcasting campaigns and, based on all the things that Ryan has said there. But I have a question just for the industry, You've been through thousands of content at this point. So you may have an idea or two on how things have been and how things are going to be going forward. So what do you see the future of podcasting in general, say to the end of the decade, as a great, marketing tool for B2B or even B2C?
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's a few ways to look at this. I mean, overall, podcasting, I mean, I'd say the power of podcasting is not going to change, right? Like, I don't
Mm.
think that the real value prop of podcasting is going to change that much. The reality is it's just deeper, right? You're deeper in the funnel. You're giving, especially in a B2B context, right? Here's the opinion, right? This is the opinion to start the whole thing off, which is I think companies understand their customers really well for the most part. I think they have trouble understanding their audience. And companies are so customer centric that they forget to be audience centric. And an audience member, a fan, and a customer and a prospect are all different people. So they
Mhm.
may overlap. They're going to overlap, right? But these are different people in different stages of the process. You could have somebody following you and say, even Dots, for example, you can have somebody following you and they never will buy from you. They'll never work with your company, but they're a fan of you. And now we're in the age of that, right? So I think when it comes to B2B and the future of it, it's personal brand oriented, if you want to use that word to describe it. Really, what I'm saying is founders, employees, especially employees, they're going to have more followers than the company does, right? So they're going to be very powerful. And honestly, let's let them be the talent, right? The CEO doesn't
Yeah.
always have to be the talent. The CEO, really, it's a lot of yes men around them just being like, yeah, boss, that sounded great. Let's put it out, because they already have all the experience and the ego, which helps them. That's why they got to that point. But I think the future of this is definitely more influencer based. Employees and slash contractors slash brand ambassadors being those influencers, and really B2B companies connecting with the audience and really like
Ye-
focusing on building an audience, regardless of did we get X ROI? Did we have X booked calls from this podcast episode? It's really the brand awareness, you could say. But I really look at it like, yeah, customer centric is great. Everybody's customer centric. Nobody's going to tell you that they're not. But can we be audience centric?
Hmm. I've learned something new today. Be audience centric instead of being customer centric. It's a bit of
Yeah,
a hard
both.
pill to swallow. Yeah, it's a very hard pill to swallow these
Mm.
days. I'm sure you probably know what I'm talking about, because
Yeah.
there is what I call the cold recession. People will not agree to it, but there is a recession going out there. Businesses are scrambling for survival. The public is scrambling for survival, and there's a lot of cost cutting going on, and people are looking for instant gratification, right? What you're saying does not, quote unquote, fall into instant gratification, but at the end of the day, that is the only way to make true sustainable commercial value, which is be audience centric. Some people also call it be user centric, but I like audience centric instead of being target centric and all those things we used to think about many years ago. Actually, it might sound ironic, but profitable marketing, as in a book that I read called Killer Marketing by Robert Rose and Joe Polizzi, is that the most profitable way for marketing is basically what Ryan has said: being audience centric, creating, demand, making sure people think about you when they think about a certain problem, and giving that you have a specific solution to it. Okay, I will stop ranting now. Um, when
Gonna
it
be a
comes to
lot of
channel,
that today
oh yeah, absolutely, you're right about that.
on
So if
both
you're
sides.
listening, it's not going to stop. Yeah. Um, I would like us to. This is not a means to justify the podcast marketing channel, but the truth is that you have a lot more experience. I've got a bit of experience with B2B marketing, and we've seen how it's worked for businesses. A research by Salesforce, looked at different channels and how they contribute to sales pipelines, and webinar being one of the least, even though webinar is able to get leads or maybe opportunities, but it's not able to close. My question is this: in that report, we did not have podcasts. Do you think podcast is beginning to become the new webinar? Do you think it's a replacement to webinars, in terms of being one of the channels, B2B channels with a high close rate?
Yeah, I mean, I'll add like a little context to this because I have a little bit, which is I worked for a marketing agency, in 2018, 2019. And that's
Yeah.
what they did. They created a webinar, but they kind of did what a lot of these companies do, which is like the metric is get people to sign up. Nobody's asking who,
Mm.
right? Nobody's asking who's signing up. Nobody knows what stage of the process they're in. Nobody knows if they have enough bandwidth or revenue to work with us. It's all about, the KPI is like, X amount of people signed up, boom, we're successful. And so that's kind of the old way. I think most companies and maybe most marketers, hopefully, or CMOs or whatever you want to name, I think they're waking up to this concept of like, it's not just about filling the webinar up with people. It's really about who. Um, I will argue for webinars for a couple minutes, which is the first one is
Mhm.
you actually can see who. With a podcast, you have a number. It doesn't, if I listen to Dot's podcast, my name doesn't show up anywhere. It's just a number. I just add to the
Yeah.
number of listeners. With a webinar,
Yeah.
if you have signups, now it's a harder barrier to entry because somebody's putting in their email address and their name. And maybe if you add more shit to that, like hopefully you don't, but some companies do. And some companies can ask more questions and gather more data, but at least now you have a profile. So they may be able to tell you, at least the name of their company, right? So that's an argument for the webinar.
Mhm.
Another argument for the webinar is it's interactive. If it is interactive, right? If you sit on there and read off slides, that's not a freaking webinar. That's a,
That is
that's
not.
a book. That's a textbook. We used to do that in college. That's a professor, dude. Like we had that in college. Those days are over. that, that comes back to the talent portion, which is a whole nother conversation. But, if the webinar is interactive and planned by somebody who knows what the hell they're doing, well, now, okay, great. Now it can actually be an interactive thing. From my personal experience, I've seen webinars die. Is that because there's actually less webinars? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if there is or not, but I haven't seen many of them, and I'm on LinkedIn every day. And when I came on LinkedIn in 2019, trying to cold outreach people for the company I was working for, there was
Yeah.
webinars. You couldn't look to the left and right and not see a webinar. Okay. So
Yeah.
there used to be a lot of webinars. Back to the podcast conversation though. Is podcast the new webinar? No, because nothing
Okay.
is a webinar. Like a podcast will never be a
Yeah.
webinar. They're just two different things. Like that's like saying,
Yeah.
is a car the new bicycle? Like, no, people will always ride bicycles, right? There's benefits to
Yeah.
both. I think
Yeah.
the common ground, the new webinar is a live video, is basically like a weekly live video. That's the new webinar, not doing these one-off like summits that happen like once every 6 or 12 months. I bet those are great, but where I'm going with the benefits of the podcast are the weekly cadence and the listener behavior and literally this is my concept, right? Everybody
Mm.
talks about demand generation. Nobody talks about content demand generation. You want demand for your content regardless of if that person buys from you. And the best or a great way to do that is to have something that is predictable on a weekly basis. I don't care if it's a webinar. I don't care what you want to call it. It could be a podcast. It could be a webinar that turns into a podcast. That's great. And my final point on this is that if you do something live versus if you do something pre-recorded, they are two different things. So if you
Mhm.
try, if you like a monster truck is not going to beat a Lamborghini, it's just not going to happen. They're
Yeah.
two different vehicles.
Yeah.
So I think also a lot of people try to either create a schedule for their content or their webinars or whatever that's too demanding, or they do it like once a year and it doesn't really work that well. So yeah, I think the common ground is in the middle.
Mhm. I love your perspective there. I love it's its own channel basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's the new kid on the block, and it's blazing the trail from even many other channels outside webinars. When it comes to that, and like some interesting points in terms of the nuances as well. I personally do not do live. I think I might get to do live at some point, just because with live sometimes you have to do some pre-announcements, build an audience, but I also realize that if you have a great audience, all you just need to do is go live and people get notified and people know how frequently you go live. So there's a lot of logistics
Yeah.
to how that works out. But yeah, thanks for actually mentioning that. um, I want to, yeah, I know you've mentioned something about objectives and how business leaders should look at things like this. But like, I would like you to maybe talk about it just a little bit. So when it comes to, there are two problems. You address the first one, which is people need to start considering the purpose of these B2B content types, especially the podcast. And the second problem is this: people find they have accepted to do this, but they still want this overtly controlled because people think, you know, control is a way to keep risks as bay. I don't know how valuable that human psychology is, but you often find marketers in general, content marketers or podcasters, having their creativity being stifled
Yep.
because the business owner has a picture of what perfection looks like, of what emotional consolation looks like, or whatever it is. But what is your advice to business owners in trying to maybe tone down this mindset a little bit and try to strike a balance with whatever their creative objective is and
Mhm.
allowing marketers to do what they do best, which is market creatively?
Yeah, and it's a great question. I mean, and sometimes marketers aren't doing it that well at those things. Like sometimes marketers are like, here's our plan for our podcast, and then they launch it, and then it doesn't do that well. So I totally can understand a CEO not wanting to be another statistic of a podcast that dies on episode 5. But in
Right.
terms of that, I get both sides here. You got to play both. That's what I do. I deal in reality, right? Like I'm not the guy who's like, everybody should have a podcast. No, everybody shouldn't do anything, right? But that's just a, kind of where I come from with this. But I would say this, like, you need to be the company that wants to do that. So if you are not the company that wants to be the company with the podcast for any reason, then there's no reason to do it, right? There
Mm.
are companies like mine and yours that do not need a podcast. They don't need to post on social media. They don't need an email list. Why? Because they've spent the last 6 years developing 130 partnerships, right? So they don't need social media. They don't need a podcast. It just doesn't make sense. So it's not for everybody, but coming back to like the
Yeah.
creative ideas side of it,
Yeah.
is there room in your business to try things that you don't think will work? Right?
Mm.
Like that's the question. I'm a business owner. Like, if I were to answer that, not really. Like, where I'm the one trying the things that may not work, but am I letting other people do that? And so now, like, it's
Mm.
way deeper than like, hey, just let the marketer do their thing. It's really like a coming from the
Okay.
top thing of like, our business doesn't really provide time or the space, right? Because in reality, it's employees having ideas and them having no space to share that idea. And every time you get on a call, it's what's the next thing we're working on and where's the deliverable and blah, 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 blah. There's just not the space in these companies, there's not like a free hour where like, hey guys, let's just no work. Let's just talk. Whatever comes out, right? I'm not saying I do
Yeah.
this, right? Because I'm a pretty early, founder here, so I don't have all these
Yeah.
habits built in. But I think that's really what it is. I think like the easiest way to do it would be to open the space. But then if you open the space and the employees don't say anything, then well, now you can just assume that they're probably scared to say something
Yeah.
or there's fear, right? So
And,
now we have a
and
cultural / leadership thing going on. I mean, I'm gonna take a chance and say that Google and OpenAI and these companies, they probably have space for people to bring up ideas, right? And maybe Google and OpenAI are completely different, but these companies that are innovative, they're innovative because they built it into the processes. So I don't think a lot of companies have. I'm not even saying I do. Have
yeah.
bandwidth or create that space for people to bring up those ideas, in the first place.
And they should, if it's calculated ideas,
Yeah.
right? And just to chime in on what you're saying there, like I say, I'm a director and a content analyst for marketing strategy. There are a few things that, even though I know, I, I would say statistically, 80 to 85, let's say 80% of my ideas get approved, which is a very high approval rate.
Yeah.
But I don't take that for granted. Whenever I need to pitch something, I look at the creativity side of it and why it's a calculated risk. I think the problem is about being a calculated risk. And just like you said, I'm going to, make this pitch so much so that you are thinking about progress better than outcome. And I'm
Mm.
saying you have to wait for more than 5 episodes for us to see enough data to make a decision on.
I would
How
say,
about
50, where
exactly?
you're at what, closing in on 50, right?
I'm
Like,
closing on
yeah,
50. Yeah.
that's like, that's what I don't understand. Like, sorry to jump in on this, but like, it's
No,
just,
please.
it's, it's the same thing as imagine if the business was like, hey man, we got one lead. I think we're going to shut it down. Like the one lead is your ticket to 1,000 leads,
Exactly.
right? But when it comes to content, they'll be like, I mean, we got 100 downloads, shut it down. It's like, yeah, but the 100 is your ticket to the 1,000. Like, that's the same mindset. But yeah, man, you're so right, Dots, because it's like, it's just applying the logic. We can't have, because you know it, right? You know it from working for people. Your
Yeah.
employees know which logic you apply to what thing, and they know where your inconsistencies are. Some of them will bring it up to you, some of them will not. But that will expose we both of us in running our companies, we have our inconsistencies where it's like, yeah, Ryan, like you took a massive chance on this thing, but you won't even take a 5% chance on this other thing. So that's
Mm.
where the self-awareness comes in.
So there's a bit of preference for one initiative versus the other, rather than just looking at it as all pieces of a big business strategy. I think marketing leaders should be careful of that and should note that. And when you're a business where you have a lot of things running at the same time, there's a tendency to, have that happen. And we just need as much data to justify creativity. It's not just small data, because I like what you said there, Ryan. One is a ticket to 1,000, 10 is a ticket to 100, and so on and so forth. What I'm looking at when I'm looking at those figures is, what is the average like? What is the engagement? What is the conversion rate? What is the Okay, back to engagement. What is the engagement like? How relevant is this product to market fit, even if it's just at a small level? And how can we scale that by maintaining the same level of relevance? It's always the kind of things that I'm looking at. I would like to get some extra rants about how leaders should allow marketers to do their thing, but also how marketers themselves should be very open to creativity. So, for example, when it comes to the podcast campaign workflow, we know that podcast is a lot of work. From experience myself, it's hundreds of steps, hundreds of we use process sheets, hundreds of stars across clients, across episodes, across podcasts. It's a lot going on, and but I feel like we still need to be more creative in the workflow itself. And I would like to learn from your own experience. What are some of the things that you do within your own workflow that marketers should be paying more attention to in terms of podcast campaigns?
Yeah, and so are you saying like everything from the production to the end product, or just the promotion side, or the whole
No,
thing?
the whole thing.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, I mean, I'll just zoom in on one thing, because
God.
there's just a lot to it. But I'll
Yeah, I
zoom
know.
into the creative itself, right? Into the episode itself. And I think what's happening there, the thing that you don't want to be is your another interview show with nothing added to it, right? Like that's what no
Okay.
company wants to do or should do, in my opinion, just because it's saturated. That's all. Like, I don't think
Okay.
really anything in podcasting is saturated, but if anything is, it's that in terms of
Mm.
if you're just asking the generic questions, right? Like this episode has an angle. Me and Dots
Mhm.
believe in a certain thing. He may have a little bit different perspective than me. He's a different person. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like this is what we're advocating for. And it's kind of obvious. Like if you're listening to it and you don't really believe in any of this and you're like, I'm a sales guy, I wouldn't even make any content at all. Like you guys are crazy. Cold email is it. It's over. Then you're not even listening. Like you didn't even get this far in the
Yeah.
episode, right? So that's
Yeah.
what should be happening. So I think in terms of, I'm not a process guy. I'm not a systems guy.
Yeah.
I'm a
Mhm.
sales, marketing, brand, creative, on the front lines, making the posts every day, that's me. So that's what I can zoom in on. But I think that it's very hard for us to zoom out and come up with a good idea for our content and podcast in a boardroom, in a Zoom call, where the same Zoom call at the same time of the week that we've always done.
Mhm.
The place where it's probably going to come is that walk down the street when you're working out, when you're
Yeah.
in the
Well,
shower, all of those
yeah.
things, driving
Yeah.
the car, right? That's where that one
Yeah.
idea. Now, okay, take that idea, put it in your notes, bring it to that next meeting. But I know this is like a pretty in the weeds thing here, but I seriously think, at least in terms of my perspective on this, like what I do and what we both do for clients is give them the perspective that they just can't get themselves. But you can do that yourself. But I did this
Yeah.
I was a freaking rapper, man. I was freestyle rapping every day for 3 years. Like this, I can sit down with a client, they tell me their idea, and I'll have 3 ideas right there that they'll
Yeah.
be
That's
like, I
true.
never thought about that. You guys probably do the
That's
same
true.
thing. So
Yeah.
but you don't need us to do that, right? Like most companies aren't going to tell you that. They're going to be like, you need us. We're the best. Like we're the number, we have the ideas. Like we have some, you have some, but I think where people need to calm down on the process and systems is in the ideas, because
Mm.
ideas are not bound by time. They're not bound by processes. They're not bound by systems. They're bound by whatever you think God is or whatever that is for you.
Mhm.
That's what they're bound
Mhm.
by, right? Like that's the only limit. There's no limitations, but it comes from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think some of the best, I know I'm getting a little like, woo woo here with this, but I just think we can do 10% more of that 15%. Take a chance on an idea that sounds to other people maybe stupid, but that's great for you,
Yeah.
to you and your company. Like,
Yeah.
go for it. Nobody's coming up. Nobody's changing the game anyway. All they want to do is play it safe and get X amount of leads and X amount of ROI and get out of there. So if you
Yeah.
can, lean into the creative process and take a couple more risks, I think that's where at least you have a chance to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, I think all this boils down to freedom, creative freedom.
Yep.
And I completely agree. This podcast, I could mention right now 5 things that makes it a bit different from what we have out there, from the visual experience to
Yep.
the conversational style to how I prepare for episodes and the research is involved and so on and so forth, down to content repurposing and things like that. But I think, just like you said, just be open to ideas. They will often plug into your strategic structure anyway, and
Mm.
not don't focus on what somebody else is doing or competition, because even if you have the same audience, at the end of the day, people buy 70% based on emotions, connections.
Yep.
And we can spend the end of all today mentioning brands that perfect that. And it's important for that creative freedom to be allowed. And if you need somebody else to help you because you don't have the fortitude to, you know, allow for creative freedom, then hire someone like Ryan and his company to get the podcast for you, get the kind of coaching you need that is specific for you, and get that done so that you can still speak to your audience and get the right results from them. This is great so far. Let's look at some other aspects. And there are many recipes when it comes to a compelling B2B podcast, perspectives, culture, personality, brand purpose, even the delivery. We've mentioned a lot of aspects to that. But risk taking, I like what we've mentioned before in terms of um ideas will come from anywhere and you being able to welcome that idea. But I'd like to get some extra context with regards to how you take risk, especially from the internal perspective. So what I mean by that is that how a company wants to start a podcast and they say it has to happen from within, it has to happen from their perspective. For example, maybe getting the hosts or even getting guests and things like that, and them trying to tell brand stories for thought leadership.
Mhm.
How can they take the right kind of risks, especially when the content is not sales worthy in any way? Let me give a very good example just to make sure this
Sure.
is being understood. I did speak to a guest out there in South Africa. They own a marketing agency. So that's what they do, marketing agency. While their brand purpose is what they do for women. And what they did was that they literally went into the factory and, in trying to support the breast cancer movement, produced a breast pump. This is a marketing agency producing a breast pump.
Yep.
And that was how far they could go in terms of connecting their brand purpose as, a company that is not just diverse, but is women driven and so on and so forth. So how much, I guess, how far do you think enterprises, for example, should get out of their comfort zone to tell the right kind of brand story and resonate well with their customers?
Yeah, I like that. The great example too. That's really interesting that they did that. That is proof, right? And so it just depends what you want. If that's important to you, right? It comes back to, do you want to be the brand or business that does this? If the
Okay.
answer is yes, then now we can start to unpack this. The example I have in my head is, basic is breaking down the most successful hip hop songs of all time and then pulling out the marketing, just specifically like the marketing takeaways, right? That would be a really interesting combination of hip hop and marketing, right? So that's just one example. What you can do because it's hard to give frameworks for this because it's creative. Like the breast pump thing, we couldn't just have come up with that on a podcast. Like somebody had that idea, one person. And then somebody else was like, we could do that. And somebody else was like, that's insane. We're not doing that. And then, like that's I mean, that's a lot. That's so different. You got to have the capital. It's a whole thing, I assume. What you can do is apply one thing, say hip hop to podcasts. You can apply, say with sales, you can apply, maybe like books. Maybe you can apply like the most successful books of the 1900s with sales. I don't know how you would do it, but somehow you would do it. You would take these two things that don't seem like they have a connection and put them together. One of them being the thing you do really well, and then the other thing being something that you're interested in, or something that your brand is about. Like for me, like I said, it's hip hop for me. My podcast is health,
Yeah.
hustle, and hip hop. Those are the three things. I combine
Yeah.
those together.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how to do it. I'm 140 episodes in. Like this is just the beginning. I'm just figuring out how to combine those. But yeah, I think that's just like a rough framework for doing that is, can you take something else, marketing, but then breast cancer awareness? Great, put it together, right? That's what a lot of these kind of podcasts or brands are doing, is they're taking something from society and culture, pop culture, and then combining it with the thing that they do. It's a little bit lighter. It's not the textbook. It's less in your face or less in your head, and a little bit more entertaining. So I think that's just one
Yeah.
way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. And when it comes to Ryan, when it comes to podcast recording formats, we have all kinds of formats out there. For example, what we do right now is single host to single guest. I've had to do single hosts to multiple guests, casual storytelling, kind of what we sort of do. Some people do rapid fire questions. I ask a question, you get an answer immediately, and it's just like that, very short. Um, People do podcast episodes that are 2-3 hours long because they know it's like Mark Zuckerberg, for example, and they would
Yeah.
happily listen to it. There is a narrative style, but there are so many kinds of podcast formats. But that's just some of the ones I have come across. What are some of the ones you have come across in terms of uh, um, B2B formats that have worked well for your clients and some of the creative ways they've done those recordings? Of course, you
Yeah.
mentioned live, so don't mention that again because that's out of it.
I got you. Yeah, man, I think the interviews, like I said, the interview podcast is just more difficult, especially if somebody doesn't know the names. If you're driving them from your audience, then great, but don't expect to blow up overnight. I think the new interview is co-hosted. I think co-hosted is becoming like what the interview was, I would say, in 2015, 2016.
Okay.
Interview podcasts were really popping off. I'm talking Tim Ferriss launched in 2014. Joe Rogan had gained a ton of traction. And this isn't B2B, it's just culture of podcasting. But I think the interviews kind of tired. In general, I'm saying overall, hey, I do an interview show and so do you, right? So it's not like it's dead. Nothing's dead. But I really am leaning heavily on the co-hosted for a few reasons. The first being so you can split the work. That's great. This podcast is a lot of work. That's why your producer's here. He's invaluable, right? We do it too. We're producers as well. We totally get it. You could split that work. So say it's the CEO and the CMO, or maybe it's the CMO and their friend who's also a CMO, right? Like this doesn't have to be full internal company. Like this can help your company without it being like the figureheads of the company. And then another reason why co-hosted is nice is that I have my personality and you have your personality. If we're co-hosts, right? We think about things differently. Perfect. That expands our net and our reach in terms of the audience, right? That's why you see, I mean, guys, if you're, B2B, just please, if you do B2B, stop watching B2B podcasts. Stop looking at them. Stop consuming them. Take Nelk Boys, for example. They got one of the biggest guys in the fitness industry ever, Bradley Martin, right? Online fitness. They got their own two or three guys that have been a part of their brand, like the actual Nelk Boys themselves. Then they're just getting celebrity on celebrity on celebrity. So they have like 3 or 4 hosts, and then they have the guest, right? And so don't study the competition. Like, if you're studying the competition, you're already creating from the past because they're already doing it and you're not. Look at what's working in the other variables, right? Look at what's working in culture, right? I'm literally just preaching Gary Vee at this point. Just go watch like 6 Gary Vee videos. You'll understand it. The problem is nobody takes the advice. Nobody takes the advice. They watch it, they say that's cool, but nobody takes the advice. If you want to succeed, especially in podcasting, don't try to make a B2B podcast. Make something for the culture. Make something that's working in another variable and apply it to you. It's the same thing as applying hip hop to marketing. We're applying Barbie to sales.
Bobby, yeah.
Perfect.
But that's
Perfect. Take the Barbie
yeah.
and run with it, dude. You're going to get SEO benefits that you've never seen, right? It's just taking things that are working in these other variables, applying them there. The thing that's not going to work is you trying to be like, well, that company did it like this, so that's what I'll try. Because it's definitely where I heard from Jeff that it's working.
I like what you said there about like it's turned its head right now. You have multiple hosts, one guest, multiple hosts. Basically, just be open to whatever you think would work. And
Yeah, I can't tell you what format to use. That's I can't tell you what because we
yeah,
don't know. But we can.
yeah,
I am seeing that trend. But I think that overall, regardless of what format you should use, it's like just take notes on what's working
yeah,
in culture. Like that's what
yeah.
people are consuming. At
Culture.
the end of the day, it's very
Mm,
hard to get somebody at 7, or 9 o'clock at night once they're done for the end of the day. You think they're gonna turn on a marketing podcast after they just
exactly.
marketed all day? No, make something fun and entertaining where you're drinking beers or I
Yeah,
don't care what you're doing,
yeah,
but make it,
yeah,
make
yeah,
it something that maybe they're gonna consume a little in a lighter way, right? And
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
where I want B2B to go. I want B2B to
yeah.
just be fun.
And I hope we are doing a good job so far, right?
Oh, we're chilling, man. This is what I want to do. This is my favorite interviews. Right.
Yeah, Robert Rose, the content marketing institute guy. Well, he's no longer there, but great content marketing guy. He also mentioned the same thing. He said
Mhm.
podcast is not hardcore B2B stuff. It's supposed to be entertaining, and entertaining. It's in fact, he said you are not meant to like listen to it with the intent of trying to get takeaways,
Mhm.
right? Even though we shared some takeaways here on this podcast, what is in form of rants, it's in form of thought-provoking, maybe emotive conversations and things like
Yep.
that. But yeah, I agree with you. It's the culture, and at the end of the day, even if it's not done before, people will follow it because it's not been done before. You get what I
Yeah.
mean?
Even if
Uh,
it's not good, if it's different,
yeah.
you have a chance. If it's and it's good, nobody's gonna listen to it. 'Cause you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm,
that's the thing. If
mm,
the entertainment value is here, if the content's here, but the entertainment value is here, I'd probably rather switch them, right? Because
yeah, yeah.
if the rest of the people are not going for the entertainment value, then go for that, right?
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. I'm telling you, this has been awesome so far. If you're not subscribed to the Marketing Leadership Podcast, now you know why we do so. And all our episodes are always like this, always great nuggets, to pick out from. I like this one you just mentioned. I just feel very excited about it so much so that I'm going to cut it out and I'm going to share it with the world. It's
Let's
it's
go.
very, very important to focus on the culture. When it comes to culture too, there's a bit of a brand essence that comes with it. There's a
Yep.
bit of that brand connection, when you think about a certain culture type. For example, hip hop, when you think about hip hop, you think about and one, and
Mhm.
one is still existing today. They still sell to some extent. But when you think about culture, you think about that kind of a brand. They make sports wears for people, for the culture, for the hip and things like that. So that is a very interesting way to look at things. And if you're the kind that work in a business that is very big and you have to create these kinds of different buckets, then do so. If they align with the business strategy, do so. If you're a small business, even better. That way you are able to really hone in on your niche and make your audience happy. Again, don't forget what Ryan has been saying. It's the audience marketing. It's not necessarily customer marketing as it were. It's audience marketing, because with audience marketing, you get revenue marketing and everybody is basically happy. A few other execution ideas, because I'm loving the way this is going. And you are well known as a content repurposing, warrior. You are able to take content and just, make the best part of it. You take a podcast episode, for example, and you make a content machine out of it. How do you do that? Feel free not to give too much spoilers, because I still want business leaders to find you and get how you do it. Yes, that's how we get value, if you're listening. So please give us some ideas as to how you can make a content machine out of content seeds, if I will use that word.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I think the first hard and fast rule is do not sacrifice one for the other. So
Okay.
don't sacrifice your long form podcast for just for the short form clips, right? I think that's the art. Repurposing is an art as much as it is a skill. And AI
Sure.
can repurpose your podcast. Like I can put my podcast into an AI clip generator and it can make the clips. That's not
Okay.
art though, right? The best podcast clips in the world are created by people who will spend 24 hours on a 55-second clip. I'm talking 16 revisions of editing, right? Like there's an art to this. And so I think that's what people lose. People just assume like, okay, I'm going to make this podcast, then I'm going to kind of cut up all the clips, and then we're going to transcribe those and make them into blog posts, and then ChatGPT is going to summarize those, and those are going to become our LinkedIn posts. Like, yes, totally. That's how it works. That's how it can work. My question is, how good are the posts? My question is, how good are the videos? We can repurpose till our heart's content, till the cows come home, but are the videos good? Is the repurposed content actually getting consumed? And when it gets consumed, is it engaging? Are people engaging with it, right? So I think that's my whole thing with the repurposing. Like, how good is it? Is it worth it to have to pay somebody $200 to $500 for a 60-second clip of your podcast? Yes. If that clip 20, 30, 40, 50,000 views, 600 comments, 1,000 shares, was it worth it to do that instead of having an AI make it where it gets 10 likes and 100 views again? And, just like the last clip we did, but we're doing TikTok because they told us to. Like, hey guys, the art, the strategy, once again, the culture of it. Let's make something new. I mean, that's where I'm at with repurposing. I'm like, there's people who are way better than me at creating the repurposing systems in terms of, like I said, from long form to this to that. We do it. I understand it. My producers and my team and my editors understand it probably way better than I do in terms of the system. But when I make a clip for my podcast, I'm looking at, is somebody going to watch? Is the first 5 seconds of this clip going to lead them to the next 5 seconds?
And so on and so forth. Yeah. Like, I believe I think it's Tech Tooltips is the YouTube channel. He sort of backed out from what he's doing as an administrator and just wanted to focus on content. So that's a very smart a way to look at it. There is a last recipe before I let you go when it comes to what B2B podcasts need to be, and I would like to get what your mindset is about it when it comes to supporting channels for pushing these episodes. You've mentioned a couple already. I'm talking about channels themselves, not distribution platforms. I'm talking about traffic channels that you use to push this. I don't want to give an example yet because I would like to see how you do it. Are there some of those channels that you use, and how effective are those? Are there paid versions of it? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, we're organic social all day, every day. That's just what we're good at. I don't claim to be good at. I don't know how to do podcast SEO. I can do it simply, but I don't have an entire framework and strategy for that. Getmorelisteners.com, I believe, is their website. Those are two of my friends out of the UK. They are podcast SEO specialists, right? So there's different companies to achieve different goals. For us, we are an audience-based podcast organic promotion company. Like when we look at
Okay.
promotion, we don't teach you how to market. We suggest you go
Mm,
to probably a company like yours or some kind of marketing agency or a branding
mm,
expert. I'm not sure, whatever that is for
mm.
you.
Yeah.
We can teach you how to build the audience, but you're not going to then you're not going to launch the podcast with us immediately. You're then going to have to build up that audience or at least have something started. But
Yeah.
what we do in terms of distribution and really getting the podcast out there is relentless social media. But once again, like I said, how good are the videos? How good are the clips? That's what we're focusing on. That's why we use a system to launch your podcast. So if you were to launch the show, if the day that it's launched is when people are finding out about it, how well is that launch going to do? So our system is designed so people know about it. I'm not even talking weeks, months. And you know
Yeah.
what? We also have ways for them to be followed and subscribed to your podcast before the thing even comes out. I'm talking hundreds of people. And it only takes an audience of hundreds or thousands to make that happen. But people don't know how to do that. And even if they
Mm.
do know how, they won't actually go and do it because it requires a ton of work. So yeah, it's organic social for us. Like I said, I'm not an SEO guy. I am a Spotify, iTunes, or Apple Podcast, and now YouTube. I have 1,000 subs on YouTube. That's where I'm at personally with my channel. We're now starting to offer help on that too, to go from YouTube being essentially a public Google Drive to YouTube actually being a channel for growth.
Mm. I like that. Yeah, and with the YouTube podcast, there may be a great opportunity with that. But what's also good about everything you explained is how sustainable it becomes. I was speaking with the one guest the other day, and she was like, because of my long production times, there might be content that goes stale. And I told her this content can never go stale because it's always evergreen. I'm not saying evergreen works in all cases, but I don't see myself as the news jacker. I know about
Yeah.
trends, I know about Barbie and every other thing out there, but I don't like news jack it and just bury everything about it when it comes to like dot loves marketing in general. I always love content to be evergreen so that they are sustainable. Ryan, it's been awesome, awesome, awesome episode with you. Thank you so much for your perspective. I really, really like this. And this will be very useful because a lot of people are still trying to figure this out when it comes to like podcast campaigns of all types. So thanks for the premium marketing wisdom. Now, where can our B2B business leaders find you? If they need help generating revenue-based content and revenue with realistic expectations, of course.
Yeah, man, definitely. So, I mean, LinkedIn's my platform of choice in terms of social. You've seen it, I'm posting there every day. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
giving away everything that we do. I mean, I talk about it. Hey, here's the reality of podcasting. Here's the percentages of podcasts that are happening right now. Here's the industries that are, that I would launch in. Here's the ideas. I even give away actual podcast ideas that you can take and use. So, LinkedIn's definitely it. We're on all platforms, across everything. So if you just type in podcast principles, like I said, yeah, LinkedIn for me, but I'm also on Instagram and, you name it. If you just Google it, it'll show up. And then it's podcastprinciples.com if you want the specifics on what we do. But yeah, it's been amazing. This interview has been a lot of fun. I can't wait to pull clips from this. Definitely some gold in there on both ends, man. So I love how you do the show. I think this is also the future of B2B right here. I mean, you're walking the talk, so to say. That's appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's high praise. So thank you.
You got it, man.
Absolutely. That's all for today, guys. Please see more episodes on my website, dotslovesmarketing.com, and subscribe to the Marketing Leadership Podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. See you next episode. Connect the dots.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Listen Network. There will be links to resources mentioned in today's show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.